Okay, it's May 19th. It's Thursday. It's a continuation from our meeting on Tuesday. We'll start with announcements. Just a reminder, town meeting is next Tuesday, band concert the 15th, Memorial Day is the 26th, and also a reminder on Memorial Day, after the parade, there'll be a barbecue open to all. So you can check the Legion website on the information for that. Those are my announcements. You guys have any announcements?
Not unless you wanted to mention the email from the DPW director today. Unless she wants to, the DPW director mentioned that Aspen Landscaping, right? Yeah, it was, do you want to speak to it?
I can.
Yeah, go ahead, just as an announcement. It was a nice
So
gesture.
we received an email from Alaska Landscaping, and they're going to donate the 4-step fertilizer program for the park, and also they're going to mulch all the beds over there for us. So that was very nice of them. We thank them and appreciate that.
Thank them publicly.
Make sure we'll send them a letter of thank you. Brian, any announcements?
No, thank you.
Okay, anybody here for public forum? Okay, we're going to move to topic 1 of posted business. Last Tuesday, there was some concern on some of the numbers from finance. The way it was going to work was the finance chair with our liaison, Brian, and some of the finance members and town administrator. We're going to have a discussion with Bay State Accounting to figure out what was happening. And my understanding, and we'll be turning this over to Daryl, is that everything's been worked out. It more or less turned out to be a bad formula on a new workbook we're using to Excel. So basically it wasn't nothing major. It wasn't no big concern. It was just a bad formula. So I'm going to turn this over to Chairman Mr. Williams. Go right ahead.
Thanks, Ed. We met on yesterday at 1 o'clock, and I'd like to thank Marlene and Justin. They really had things well put together for a meeting for 1 o'clock. Justin explained things well. For those of you that want to follow along, so I guess we'll go to page 2, which is, and you will see on the bottom right-hand side, the calculated surplus or deficit. And our calculated surplus, which we need to have, now is $6,169.11. The other day, that number was $259,000 or something on that. So how they arrived at that is, as Ed alluded to, there was a problem in one of the formulas going from the spreadsheet we used last year to the spreadsheet we used this year. Right, Marlene?
Correct.
Marlene, you just tell me when I'm wrong, okay? So, hi, Sean. So, anyway, so once that was corrected, then there was some other adjustments that were made in the budget. So now we're gonna go to page 3. On page 3, this is the taxation summary. Current new growth, we had a number of 50,000 in there, and that number got changed to $60,000. So that was an additional $10,000. Debt exclusions was highlighted, but I'm not sure why. There was no change on debt
No.
exclusions, right?
No, there isn't.
Okay. So then as we continue, just start flipping pages. Local receipts stayed the same. Okay, we're gonna go, there's a tab that says other financing sources. I have no idea, they're not page 9, there you go. So on other financing sources, on the top, we had an additional $7,000 put in, I believe it was put in there for the computers. So that was that was changed, so that $7,000 is really part of the $321,619.39.
We just moved it down to.
So it was moved down into there, so that was just a small issue, not a big change, but, so the free cash number that we're using is $404,000. And of that $404,000, we are actually spending $321,619.39. Okay, so then we go to the next page, and this is overlay deficits. And I might need some help on this one. There was a change on that, wasn't there? Oh, we added an additional $31,537, and that was added because we know there was a settlement between the assessors and the church, correct? So that was put on. I think tax titled, it's highlighted, but that stayed the same. That's $25,000. Snow and ice, which is $87,000. So the selectmen decided at their meeting that instead of taking snow and ice from free cash, that they would do it as we've done it in other years in the recap. And so, which is fine, we just have to make sure that we account for the $87,000 in the recap. So that's that figure, correct?
And that's for
Yep.
fiscal year 19.
And that's fiscal year 19, that's this year. There is a fiscal year 18 of $21,000, which is being taken care of in free cash. That's part of that 321,000. Okay. So then we're gonna go to budgets. There were no changes in all the budgets, right?
There hasn't been any changes, although the town clerk is here.
I know.
She'd like it, yeah.
I know.
Okay.
Let me get through this and then
Okay.
we'll get to that. There'll be other discussion. Huh? Promises.
problems.
No, yeah, no. We get in trouble when we promise. Okay, so once we get through all of that, there was a slight change in insurance that was adjusted down to $600,000. I don't remember what it was, but it's $600,000.
It was 643.
So then, I think it's on the last page, there we go. The only other, so on the last page, this is special articles. We had a discussion on this, so there's a water and sewer deficit, that's $100,000, that's for fixing the Route 5 water main break, which occurred this winter. So that is gonna, so in water and sewer, they call it surplus, but it's a bad word. It's not really surplus. Retained earnings.
It's the retainer.
Retained earnings, there's $168,000 in fiscal year 2018 in retained earnings. We are going to use $100,000 of that to pay for the water main break. So, and then, because we had talked about an additional $53,000, which is the potential deficit for fiscal year 19. But Justin said, we don't know what it actually is going to be, so let's just wait.
Mhm.
So we're not going to account for that $53,000. We will account for it eventually. Water and sewer is gonna be upside down.
Mhm.
It's an issue, and we've all talked about it. We know we're gonna address the issue this fall. We've gotta sit down and kind of figure that out. So, anyway, so those were the changes. Did I miss anything, Marlene?
No.
Nice job, Daryl.
Those were the changes, and that leaves us with a excess levy capacity of $6,169.11. We asked Justin if he was comfortable with that number. He said, yes. Well,
Comfortable with the accuracy, not.
Yes.
Yes.
Comfortable with being that low?
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
Oh, the other thing we asked
That's
Justin, the other thing we asked Justin, we had a discussion the other night about taking, so there'll be approximately $83,000 in free cash that we haven't decided how to spend yet, we as a group. So one of the options we talked about was taking a portion of that and moving that into finance reserve. So it would give us options, we were thinking of it in particular possibly for the ambulance, where if we do not decide to go with a new lease and fund an ambulance at this time, we recognize that it's old, it has problems, we kind of want a backup plan. So we can move money from free cash into finance reserve that we could use down the road. And he said, which was kind of interesting, other towns commonly do this, which I had no idea. So anyway, so that's a discussion we can have, when we come to talking about the ambulance.
Yeah, we got down to the 30,000 roughly, give or take, probably 15 years ago or something like that? I mean,
Yeah.
I think it used to be higher
Used
than
to be
that,
higher,
but we,
much higher.
back when we were struggling to balance the budget
That's right.
15 years ago, that's where we did it. In fact, I think we were down to 15, 20,
I think
15,
20.
something
Yeah.
like
Down
that
to
at one
20.
point. So
Yeah, and we just increased it a few
yeah,
years ago.
it has been more
Yeah.
than that.
Right. And,
That predates me a little, but
and as I see it, if we want to adjust that, then we have to cut some budget somewhere. So that's, obviously everything's up for discussion, but, we have to be.
the
mindful.
$6,000,
The $6,000, right.
pretty much.
Yeah, we have no other choice. I mean, because as a policy, we don't use free cash to fund regular budget, which makes good policy sense.
Yeah, I think the policy has been that, or the thinking has been that you use free cash and or stabilization or whatever one-time monies, quote unquote, to fund things when you have a reasonable expectation that at some point in the near future it's coming back.
Right.
Like if you took a one-time cut or hit for some reason, that's one thing. Or if you took, a temporary decrease in state aid over a period of a couple of years, that would be one thing. But none of that's happening. It's just a matter of the revenue is what it is. So there's no reason to think that you're going to be in a situation where you could come up with it next year other than by the same method.
Right.
And how do you do that going forward? I mean,
Right. Yeah.
you're basically starting to add free cash into the ongoing budget after that. And then what do you do? How do
Then
you?
you're kind of in a slippery slope.
Right. And we know we're taking actions right now to reduce free cash potentially in the future. So like the unemployment trust action that we're taking could
Right.
potentially reduce free cash next year, because if you didn't spend that, it would have fallen to free cash. Now it's not going to.
Kind of like a one-shot deal.
So, I mean, there's other.
Yeah.
Since you don't fully understand every penny of where your free cash is coming from,
You can't guarantee it.
and you can't guarantee it, right?
I mean, to be honest, that's sort of what the schools have run into now with the school choice money. I mean, that's exactly what we're doing. We're going to be spending over $1 million out of school choice for special ed and operations.
And both,
School choice
both
drive-
those things
if-
are requirements. You can't not
But
do
I
it.
mean,
Yeah.
if school choice dried up next
Right.
year,
Yeah.
the schools would be in front of us
Right.
saying, we need $1 million
Right.
more than you've already given us. So I guess I'm just trying to make the
Yeah.
comparison or
Yeah.
between free cash and school choice are
Yeah.
somewhat of the same thing.
I know Lydia wanted to talk about her budget, and go ahead. So let me just,
It's general government.
general government,
General,
it's,
That
oh,
page
there
number,
it
anyone?
is, it's, is it
10,
page 11?
Thank you.
So whenever you're ready.
Okay, so on the clerk's line, the salary, I'm okay with the salary line, I adjusted a couple things on that, so I'm okay with that. What I was trying to do when I submitted my budget was to take some things away from the clerk's expenses and put them into the election expenses. Because for some reason, the town clerk had always paid for things like coding the voting machines and printing the ballots, and for our elections anyway, they don't do for state elections, but they do the coding. So it just made more sense to be on the election side. Then the town clerk's budget is gonna pretty much be a lot easier to keep track of. That's not gonna go up and down because of elections. The only thing that should be going up and down would be the next line, which is election registration. And both the salary and expenses would go up and down depending on how many elections, special town meetings, things you had during the year. So along those lines, I wanted to change the 9,206 to 3,656.
3,656.
Correct. And then on the next line, under elections, those expenses would go up to 7,232.
Okay,
Now, also the salary on election and registrations, because you don't need as many people working polls, because you don't have as, you've got one less. That comes down to 6,430. However, that's without the COLA. If you add the COLA to that, it's now 6,559.
Right, and there isn't a COLA in there.
No, there isn't, but isn't there, shouldn't there be?
Well, I guess that's for discussion.
that's part of discussion tonight.
Okay.
How did we apply it in similar cases?
Well, I had used the spreadsheet provided by the treasurer's office. There are a number of, I guess, positions or town officials that are not included on that list. Election registrars are not included on that list.
Okay, I'm, first I heard, in 6 years.
Well, as I said, and ZBA members are paid per meeting, so we didn't include a 2% for ZBA.
Yeah.
So people who routinely receive a regular stipend were included on that list. Is that correct? Right.
Okay.
But the fire department wasn't
The
included.
fire department is just the chief and an employee, one of the deputy chiefs.
So how come the volunteers, quote unquote, don't get a 2%?
Wait a minute, can you repeat that again?
So my understanding is, Edwina and I were talking about this, again, everybody who receives a regular paycheck is compensated, whether it's a regular stipend,
Okay,
received the 2% increase.
so it would be, for
The hard thing about the fire department and the ambulance department is by call. And how do you really judge that? And we're not saying that they're not gonna get the 2%.
do you do it based on their hourly rate?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but you just don't know what the cost is.
Exactly.
Right, but you can't not give them COLAs, like that's
Right,
kind of,
and
and
we
we have it-
discuss this because they have received it in the past.
yeah, and if they're not, so I guess is the proposal now is they are not receiving it.
It's up for discussion.
I'm trying to,
No,
no,
I'm
no,
not
that's what I just want to
saying-
understand.
I'm
So
not saying,
yeah.
no, it's up for discussion.
I would argue that they are regular, if you took my payroll and you ran it over 26 pay periods, that 95% of the people appear on every pay
Right.
schedule.
So the instructions were non-union employees.
Yep.
That was the
Oh.
instruction.
Absolutely.
Regular does not mean you get a paycheck every week. Regular was how many is consistent hours you worked. So how do you say one person works 5 hours this week and then 30 the next? That never happens. But there was no way to quantify that number. It's not that they shouldn't get the 2%. It wasn't our intention that they weren't going to get them. We just didn't know how to budget that into the thing. How do you
So-
calculate it?
So one way to calculate it, and maybe is an average, is so this year, and I'm just throwing numbers, so if Steven paid his guys $100,000 for,
Yeah.
then.
Every year for the last 3 years.
Yeah, that was the average, then, okay, we're gonna add 2% to that, which is $2,000, right? So we're gonna add $2,000 to that right?
Yes.
Can't we do it that way?
2% of salaries, that's all it is.
But your
Right,
salary
right.
is
It's
not
not-
consistent.
Right, but you just have to figure out, but the salaries probably vary year to year, right?
Yes.
Right.
No.
Very much so.
Because it's based on calls.
I do, and then it all goes back to the general fund, except for the ambulance,
Right.
which is self-sustaining.
Right.
So we think there's enough money in your budget, because it's based on calls, that you can give your 2% and still be able to stay.
But I'm not, but would my salaries line is not getting increased or is being increased?
We don't make that decision. We are just gave suggestions, and this is what.
I find it hard that this is the first time I'm hearing about this, I'll be honest with you.
So,
Well,
so
It
if
should have been a
we,
discussion,
so if we, so
We discuss it.
what
You
is
just
that, so what is that line right now? What is, can you tell me what your line is, not including you and Bob?
Oh.
Right?
Yeah, not right in front of me.
Well,
Give me 5 seconds. Give me a few minutes.
No, you got, and then while you're looking for that,
Can we bounce back to me?
Yeah.
yes, let's go back to you.
So the regular election workers, I'm fine, that's almost like a volunteer type of thing. They get like, I think it went up to 10:30, but you need to hold it at 10. But my wardens, those are the ones I want to give a bump to. Those are the people that if I drop dead or get hit by a bus, those are the girls that are gonna be, able to take over and run the election. 'Cause the
So-
election still has to go on whether I'm there or not.
So Sean just asked a good question. Isn't minimum wage $12 an hour?
That's
Doesn't-
federal. I mean, that's state, not federal. We go by federal.
It doesn't apply to a municipality. You do not have to pay the federal minimum wage.
Right, it doesn't have to.
federal minimum wage.
You don't
is
have to.
$7.75.
Okay.
Right. So
Okay.
so I never, I went up 1 year to 10:30 on the election workers, but I've never raised it since then. That was like my first year, I think.
So,
Or whenever the first time it went to 10, whenever. that was.
I mean, I guess what I'd like to know is what it would cost if we took everybody who works for the town. Right?
And I think that's what we need to do is when we're talking about a COLA, who does it apply to?
$128.
I thought that's what we did.
Is it, well, it was,
Right.
it was non-union personnel, and we didn't include
I know.
those people that may or may not receive.
So besides the registrar, did I say that right?
No, the
Election
warden.
wardens, and the firefighters, and ZBA, who else are we missing? Yeah, police is all in.
Yeah, they're in there.
Police,
Cemetery was not included either, right, Edwina?
No, that's in there.
Cemetery is in there?
Oh, no, it's not.
Well, no,
I
Sorry.
didn't think it
That's-
was, yeah.
That's seasonal. I don't
there's a
know.
$4,000 increase in police
Right,
budget,
so-
I'm assuming that's.
yeah,
Just give raises.
I'm sorry?
There's
Yeah, they're
a,
getting raised.
there's a $4,000 increase, right, in the police budget, well, yeah, $4,300 something dollars,
Oh, in this workbook,
yeah,
in here?
isn't there?
Well, the 2%, the 2% is,
Is in there,
yeah,
that's the 2%,
correct, right here, yeah.
so we're giving it to police.
Right.
Mhm.
yeah, so
Give it to everybody.
To all of the full-time.
was never our
full-time-
intention
full-time
not to
and
give it to
request.
everyone.
Remember the request was
Yeah,
over
no, no, that's,
We're just clarifying it now, that's all.
Oh,
That's why we
yes.
have these
Everybody
conversations and
agrees.
have these meetings.
so,
To
So
answer
nothing
your
slides-
question, Sean,
slips.
the increase in the police department line does include the part-time officers.
so,
They were
so
consistent.
what, Stephen, did you come up with a number?
It's, I think we're looking at about a $30,000 figure of, and then whatever percentage you're talking about.
2,
2% of $30,000,
$600.
$30,000, $35,000 is roughly.
600. Of 3.
The 30,000, does that include your salary?
No,
and,
not.
No, okay.
What's that?
$700 if you're using
Seven.
35,000. Exactly, you can, you
700.
turn back money every year.
So, yeah, so,
That was the thought
so,
process.
yeah, that's, yeah. So let's just, so if. Go ahead.
I think we should just include a COLA, leave the line as it is, include a COLA, if your salary line comes up short.
Yeah, no, I just,
give me the $700.
so, but I can, we can give them raises, I guess that's the
Yes.
question,
Yes.
because that will come up.
Yes.
That's
As
fine.
long as you're
There was
recovering
always-
some money from that every year anyhow.
I am, but we've had this discussion before, and then when we reach the time, I'm told no.
No,
Right.
no,
Yeah.
no, I mean,
I just wanna make it,
well, no, because
Yeah, no,
we always
Right.
pay the wages, you know.
It's not- yeah.
Yeah.
but,
Oh, yeah,
yeah, no,
all right.
If you
So,
exceeded your wages because you had
I haven't
10
seen the
extra
wages.
calls or whatever, we pay that.
You have to
too.
do it
Right,
anyway.
of
Pay
course,
it
right. Yeah, yeah.
anyways.
So,
yeah,
we're all clear?
because we're not,
2%?
yeah,
For
2%.
Every,
Well,
Across
is
the
there
board.
anyone else that
Who else did we miss?
we're not
I
clear?
think that was it.
Those were the only ones
supposed
we
to be
talked about.
Right.
in the budget.
And
You should
we're not
do the
talking,
ZBA too, I mean.
oh, you should do it for ZBA,
I
right?
mean, you're paying them per meeting, but what are they getting paid per meeting?
25 something.
Yeah, it's not, it's
It's
not.
pennies.
It's
So
pennies.
25
Yeah.
bucks a meeting,
I would think it's just, I would think it's just easier from a bookkeeping perspective anyways, to just add the 2%
Add it,
to every line on the
Mhm.
thing.
Right,
If it doesn't
So-
get used, it
yeah,
falls
right.
to the general
Yeah.
fund.
Correct, right,
talking
Right.
maybe $1,000 all told.
right.
So we can add the 2% without changing the budget.
I think so.
Well, for the election workers, it sounds like we're gonna have to change it slightly, right?
128.
Yeah, I was,
Yeah,
that's what I mean. You ended up with a few thousand.
Down $3,000.
You're right, you're down a few thousand.
So you're good, add the.
From a
two-
line item, you got it.
The
Yeah, yeah.
whole picture is gonna go up
Yes,
next year.
right.
Yeah, no, we understand.
We get it.
No, that's good. So again,
So it was 128 you calculated,
Well,
128.50
Well,
or 60?
6,559 with the COLA, that's,
130.
yeah,
but you're cutting reducing the expense side.
yeah.
Right.
Your total budget, if your total budget is gonna be down $3,000, then we're fine.
yeah, because I kind of look at them together, the clerk and the election. The clerk went down about 5,381, and the election
Does it matter which
increased
line?
2,003, so it's a net of $3,070.
And Marlene can change these lines, that's,
Just a question for you about that expense change. Just, does it make it more difficult if things happen because elections is so limited? You know what I mean? When you had it in the clerk's budget, if things happen, potentially you had money there because it's in the clerk's expense, that could be used for a
That's a
lot of
really
different
good point.
things.
Correct.
If you put it in elections, it can only be used for elections.
Right.
Is that gonna create a difficulty potentially? It's not an argument, it's just a
I
think about.
Gives you a little more flexibility. If it
Yeah.
stays in the clerk's line.
Yeah, like what we found that the more you parse down into different lines,
Yeah.
then you can't use it sometimes, yeah. That's why we
And
like
maybe-
keep all the insurance in one
Maybe
line,
that,
you know? 'cause
maybe,
it-
you know, maybe that was Louise's thinking too. You know, I
Could be.
I-
Yeah, he
I
makes-
don't-
that's a
I
good
don't
point.
know.
Yeah.
Do you wanna see how it goes this year and revisit it
Yeah,
next
yeah,
year?
that's fine, yeah.
let's do that.
I know where you are. I mean,
Sure.
Yeah, we're here. Okay, so we're good
You're all set,
with
Lydia?
the 2%. got fire, everybody gets 2%, we don't have to really change the budget
Right.
in order to do that. Okay. All right,
Bless you.
so,
Bless you.
bless you, wow,
Sorry.
that's okay. All right, are there any other things? So, on this budget, we did include 20,000 or whatever for the tree warden, that's in
It
there.
is in there.
We, oh, I did not talk to Scott.
Oh.
Oh, animal control, and just,
Go ahead.
it doesn't have to do with the budget, so I guess I can't, well, I guess it kinda does, maybe not this budget, but. But yeah, if I ask you, then you tell me if I should be talking about it. But we were talking the other week about, trying to collect the dog fees.
Hmm.
And it dawned on me, if it's gonna cost me $45 a shot to send out these citations by a sheriff, if somehow, and I'm not sure how you go about doing it, but I know sometimes when there's a certain fee or something, the town clerk gets part of it, but what I'm thinking of is part of it comes to me as a fee, part of it goes to Scott as a fee, so then Scott's got a little more incentive to serve these people that aren't registering their dogs. But I don't know how to go about that, so I'm gonna be looking into that. I just trying to get into consensus as to, does that sound like something
Yeah,
that's a decent
I
idea?
think that's something we should look into going into the future. And let's, you know, when we start our discussions this fall about about what things we need to address, let's bring Scott in. Make him come to a meeting and he can talk to us
Yeah,
about it,
that'd be great.
so. Sal?
Well, we have almost 500 dogs in Hatfield. Currently, I have about 150 that are not registered yet, and we're supposed to be registered by March 31st. So, second notices have gone out. The next round of notices will have the police letterhead on it. That usually gets a little bit of a response, and then I lead them down to, the last few, and then my last resort is serving them with a $50 fine
Gosh.
on top of the late fee.
What's the late fee? Do you know off the top of your
$2
head?
a month, starting May 1st. So right now,
Change that.
it's spayed or neutered, it's $2. Next month, it's $4. It
Gotcha.
keeps going.
We're solving the budget
Um,
problem untimely.
45. No, 45 to do, on top of the late fees, I can charge a $50 fine if they do not register their dog.
Oh, right, but to collect the fund, we have to serve someone?
Correct.
Yeah.
That-
What does that cost?
$45.
$45 to serve by a sheriff.
So,
45 or
so we
45.
collect $5 plus $2 a month in the end.
You can look at the fee schedule.
Revolving fund.
It sounds like a good deal for the person doing the service, probably. Well, I guess
For the person
not,
with the
but
dog.
if people pay, then it doesn't matter, then you don't have to, yeah.
Right, it's $10.
Yeah.
If your dog's spayed or neutered,
Right.
it's only $10, but, if you don't do it,
Okay, so we're good with your budget? Any other budgets that we need to talk about?
None.
All right, so let's talk free cash.
Yep.
So, free cash left for discussion really is the ambulance, and I'm glad Stephen is here tonight, and the 350th, right? Those are the two things that we need to talk about.
Mhm.
So, go ahead, Cindy. you
Are
had a
we
question?
considering stabilization fund at all, since we committed to that last year?
Yeah,
definitely considering it.
that's in,
The mix.
Yeah. that's in the mix. Yes, thank you. And stabilization. So, let's start with the ambulance. So we had a discussion the other night. So there's $83,000 left
In free cash.
in free cash. Me personally, I don't wanna spend too much of it, cause we don't know what we're gonna have to address in fiscal year 19 issues. We just, so,
Yeah, well, we just spent How much out of free cash to resolve issues from 18?
Right.
100 and
Oh, more than that.
$263,000,
Yeah.
something like that.
Something like that. So we need to be careful about that. We recognize that the ambulance is 13.
Up to 2003.
Six,
16 years old.
Thank you. 16 years old, and we recognize the value that the ambulance has to the town and to the residents, and we recognize that it does need to be replaced. But, you know, the question is money. So one of the options we talked about was, at least for this year, if we can put some money from free cash into finance reserve. So if something does happen to the ambulance this fall or during the fiscal year, and the only option is we need a new one, then we have a fairly readily accessible source to establish a lease. We can establish a lease whenever we want, right, Phil?
Yes.
So if something happened this fall, we can,
So you can make a decision on whether to lease a new ambulance or fix the old, whatever,
yeah.
Yeah,
depending
so
on the circumstance.
I can, if you want, Daryl. and
Yeah,
whenever
go
you're-
ahead.
So I can answer a couple of questions to the ambulance. So the first question I have, that I've received around town is will it pass inspection? It's my job to make sure it passes inspection. It's gonna pass inspection one way or the other. So if something needs to be fixed, I will fix it and I will get it to pass inspection. All too often, we sit in these meetings and we have department heads come and say, it's never gonna pass inspection. And I'll tell you, there's 2 vehicles on the road in this town right now by 2 separate departments that we sat and listened to that, we funded replacements, and they're still here. And they pass inspection. So it will pass inspection. Inspection issues. As I showed, I had an opportunity to show Marlene yesterday. There's a message center in the console of the ambulance. It tells you what the warnings are. It tells you if you need to put it in high idle because your energy is low, your voltage is low. It tells you if the line and if the oxygen tank is low. It puts the warnings out. So right now we get the bells that say there's a warning. We hit and we have the warning console, and then there's no message. The message's not there. We can't tell what the warnings are. We kind of know because we've been playing this long enough, 2 years. But it's an issue. The state is aware of it. They've given us some leniency for a number of years on the inspection, 2 years that is. The state knows that if they do want to push the issue, which they can, it's a critical function of the ambulance that it has to go to the dealership in North Attleboro. They'll have to order the part, they'll have to put it in. It's probably costly, and it'll probably be a week. How much, I don't know. I've actually tried to find out in the last few days, and I hear it's a 2003. That's going to take some time. So that's the concept of that. That's where our concern is. Can we get it through inspection? Absolutely. It might hurt my budget a little bit. It might hurt Phil's budget a little bit more because it's going to be vehicle maintenance. It has seen a fair amount of repairs. It's had bearings. It's had a diesel leak, which was my understanding is the back of the motor. It's had bearings. It's had brakes. All within the last year. So it's got some new parts, but that is in the last year. The financing options, one of the reasons, or the funding options, one of the things we talked about was ambulance trust. Ambulance trust is $23,000, $23,637 in it. That's what it was for. It's for a new ambulance. That's what people put money in that for. Ambulance trust is only accessible via action at town meeting. So if we get a couple months down the road, yeah, we could take some action if we decided to, out of finance reserve, but we won't be able to use that 23,000 unless we had a town meeting.
But consuming we have a lease.
Right, and I'm not saying you couldn't use it another
That's a
year.
7-year thing, so you would use it.
Right, you can use another year, but just as we look at options here, that would be, instead of using 30 out of finance reserve, you'd have to use 50.
But before you get off that,
Yeah.
if we keep the article.
The article is on the
The
warrant.
article is on the warrant.
Right.
If we approve it for the $20,000 or
Correct.
whatever
You
we're
You
taking,
could probably do that.
Right,
That's it.
the motion would be to appropriate $20,000 from
Right.
ambulance trust fund.
right,
and it just sits,
And
if
that
we don't
would,
use it,
and
we
that
don't
would
use
be
it.
the article.
Yeah,
That's
it's,
right.
like I said, it'll
Right.
pass, I'll get it to pass, you know,
Right.
but it's just what it's gonna cost us to get it
Yeah.
to pass, and I don't know, I know it's gonna take a number of days, it'll take a week, you know, at least. It's gotta go to North Attleboro, they gotta put it in. It's, I showed Marlene yesterday, I'm not gonna show anybody, it's in the front of the truck. That's that, you know, we do have
Well, and
ambulance.
That's a twofold thing. That's a week worth of revenue that we lose.
Yeah.
Plus, it's the expense
Yeah.
of fixing.
The
And
other
how,
part,
how long does it take to get a new ambulance?
so that's the other part, is if we do, about 180 days is a delivery time.
6 months?
We could hit, you can get lucky, if someone's got a demo, then you're gonna buy their demo for, you know, maybe a little bit less money, but the demo is not what we wanted built in Hatfield, it is what they wanted to build to sell, so sometimes it
Yeah.
has extra bells and whistles, things you don't want. So, as we look at the ambulance, as it operates, today it has $128,368 in the ambulance surplus account. That's a good number. That's like the number we want. So basically, as I look at May, June revenue, that's all really past what we want. We want 125,000 in that account at all times. That's discussed the figure we talked about with the auditors over the years and with the various accounting people we've had. I feel that next year, given the average revenue we see, we should be able to take $20,000. Like I've talked with that figure with people. $20,000 can probably come from ambulance surplus, maybe more. We'll see how it goes. And towards this. So as we look forward, that's the figures we have. That's what we're looking at. Obviously, my feeling is I would love to see a replacement. I do understand that we worry about the other shoe falling financially. That's always a concern.
How does money come into the trust?
So the trust is all straight donations. It's donations from people in this town. That's solely what goes into trust. So it at one point years ago it was as high as $80,000. Then it really, I think we used a bunch of it when we purchased the last ambulance. So it's a 23.6 goes up because it, you know, $1,000 here and there. It's a
Can
little
we-
bit interest.
Can we move money, so-called extra money from ambulance surplus to trust?
I don't know. All I know is that trust is where the donations go, and that in access trust, it's by active town meeting only.
I was,
That's,
right, and
I
I
don't
was
know.
just going to say that depending on how the trust was set up, is it just strictly set up for donations only?
Well, yeah, because, I was just, you know.
but yeah, everything above $125,000 at the end of the fiscal year, when you close one year, and you look at, okay, we closed the year, anything above 125, you could put into trust, and then you take the 65 or so and you fund the next fiscal year, and you have your 65 sitting there, and then you build it up again.
Right,
So look at it because,
Yeah, I don't know though.
yeah, I don't know
you know,
either.
'cause you normally you have to set it up specifically if you want to roll money from fiscal year to fiscal year like that, you know. It would
Right.
have to be like. a
Surplus
revolving.
Or does
Or
it take, or can you,
Surplus does roll from fiscal year to
Right.
fiscal year, and
Yeah.
it's growing, you know, we've gone a
Right.
long ways in the last couple of years in terms of growing it, you know, it's getting there,
Right. right,
so.
You know,
Okay.
my concern is just, you know, next year we're gonna be potentially sitting here having the same conversation.
Right.
And I'm guessing the cost of the
Hey,
ambulances.
buddy, it's about
have-
$8,000 a year,
have-
that's what we've seen, because
What is it?
I've gotten quotes
I
3
didn't
years
hear
now, $8,000 a year. goes up.
Higher?
Yes.
yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay,
And,
so,
and one of the other things that, in the back of my mind, I know that some of our lease program comes off,
that's why I was just gonna ask Phil if he knew what
right? One of the big lease gets paid off in July of 20. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how much is that?
The lease amount is 122 for
I-
that portion.
For that portion is 122. So, and I know there are other vehicles that will always come up.
Right.
But that does give us the option next year to use that lease to,
Right.
but that's only a 5-year lease.
Right.
So we would have to
Adjust the.
adjust for that.
So I mean, I'm just wondering, you know, so we've got 83, if the ambulance trust, thank you, has 23, we'd only use 20 or 23, with 20? All right, I gotta change my math a little. So we'd be asking to maybe use 31 of free cash. If we were gonna do it this year, and then on the following years, have it as part of the operations budget as part of the lease. Right? Can you do, can it work that way?
It's a new lease.
It
My
can't be part
understanding,
of that lease, it would have to be a separate.
yeah.
Theoretically, I guess
Well-
you could have another lease that was $30,000 less than the one that you have today for something else, and then.
Yeah, I
balance
didn't ask
that
the
way.
question correctly.
Yeah.
What I meant, I guess what I meant to say was if we entered into a lease this year, or now,
Yes.
there'd be additional monies because the other lease is done in July.
Right. Only
that-
if you
that-
if you don't renew.
Well, yes, but that's where I was kind of going with this. The money could be used,
We could use.
Theoretically.
that money. Yes, we could.
which is 120.
120, right, but.
So this would be 50 a year though after this year because the ambulance trust, you'd be out of the ambulance trust, and so so it would be a
But there
51,000.
should be 20,000 in surplus.
Oh, okay.
excess.
So ultimately, we're probably looking at 30-ish, 30,000 or so every year out of the lease operations budget.
Whatever else you were gonna do for 5 years to be $90,000 or
Right.
whatever. and
Right.
then- Yeah.
My concern really is just waiting. That's all. I mean, and I get what we're all, I think,
I'm
saying the same thing.
appreciative, this is, I've had brought this forward 3 years. I'm appreciative that it's gotten to this point in discussion, that we've gotten this far in this discussion, because other years we didn't, honestly, we didn't make it this far in terms of discussion, and it's been pushed off for other projects, clearly at times more important, but I just,
Last
Gonna
year,
come
we
next
talked
year.
about kicking the can down the road, and we want to prevent that because it's pay me now, we're paying me later. This is the third year bringing up the ambulance. It's almost 17 years old. It's at the point, if you have a 17-year-old car, you start fixing it. So you end up determining, do you start putting a lot of money into it, or do you get something different? So maybe, if we can take the 30 out of free cash and 20 out of the reserve this year, and then the other stuff comes off the lease down the road, we could juggle that around. That still
In
gives
theory, we
you,
could, it would take
In theory, we
30,
could.
that would leave us with,
$90,000.
huh?
90.
No, 50, we start with 83.
Oh, I thought you meant off of
Off the-
Phil's 120.
Oh,
Yeah.
off of
53,
Bill's
yeah.
120, yes, yeah, right.
Yeah, you just have to, whatever your next 5-year agreement could only have $90,000
Yeah. right.
worth of payments associated with it. If
Yeah,
you wanted
no,
to
no,
balance it out.
we could do that, right. And that's one way to do it. I was thinking about free cash this year. We've got 83. I know Justin doesn't want us to take all 83 because
No,
Because we
no,
haven't-
we can't do that.
can't do
Well,
that.
right, because you.
So if you
Maybe the
took
lease could be
30,
5 or 6 years.
30 and put it towards the ambulance payment, that leaves us with 50, and then you
Well-
would put, maybe 25,000 in finance reserve additional?
Is there a golden number that Justin's looking for?
No.
Some
We'll know better,
suggestion?
It really depends what the state
Well,
certifies.
Yeah, I guess finance reserve is pretty flexible.
Right,
So if we were looking to, depending on what we're looking to shore up, potentially, it's pretty
Right.
usable. Because right now, we're not expecting anything, but, except we're expecting something, but we don't know what it is possibly. So, that's,
yeah, if all of a sudden the
that's the
state,
definition. of-
if the state comes back and our 404 is really 380, then,
Right. Then,
And then we haven't talked about the 350 if they wanted $25,000 or, there's certainly a need there. Go ahead, Cindy, sorry.
No, it's fine. Just a question on the leases. The lease, maybe Phil will know the answer. The lease that is going to be finished and paid off July 20, is that an item that we're gonna have to replace again? Are we expecting a new lease to replace that item? Is that something that we said this is good for 5 years and then we buy a new
It's a
one
whole
in 5
bunch of
years and
items.
it's almost like renewing it?
Yes, what we do is we prioritize all the vehicles, and
Right.
once the lease is up, and then we know what we have to spend for the next replacement in the next 5 years.
So we're talking about this lease that comes due July
It's
20.
not one thing.
It's not one thing.
No.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
It's a whole bunch of.
Yeah.
It's a whole
Thanks.
group.
It's every department.
Yeah, and
Gotta be
so,
everyone.
yeah, and so we would, you know, if we use some of that money for the ambulance lease, then it would reduce what we would be able to purchase.
Yeah.
going
So we have to take the list and shrink it a little bit.
Shrink it.
Thank you.
Anyway, so maybe we can encompass the 350th discussion in this too,
Yeah.
because we don't wanna suck out all the money,
No.
you know what I mean? And, anyway, so. And since my wife sits on that committee, I am gonna be a little bit quiet. So I'll let you guys talk about the 350th.
Well, I'll make a few comments, if that's okay. Daryl?
Yeah,
So-
no, that's fine.
Well, so I don't think we've voted or decided yet on the ambulance, but let's just do some hypotheticals. So if we did the ambulance out of free cash, we'd be looking at, just for a round number down a little bit, $50,000 left in free cash. Okay. We want to put some in finance reserve. I agree with Cindy. I think if we could put something back in stabilization, I don't know how much, even a small token, something. I mean, I guess we'll have to see when we finish.
It's no
You know, maybe it's not worth.
There's no
Oh, we can't do it now. Okay, so we have $50,000. I think the same. Go ahead.
What if it goes to finance reserve?
And then we can.
could do it
Yeah.
next time.
I know that's a holding.
Because it'll
yeah,
roll to free
that's
cash
fine,
next year.
Right. So I guess
Spend
what I was going to say is I don't know that we're in a position right now to give the entire 25,000, but maybe we can use the same thought process, which is if we give a portion of that request tonight or at town meeting, and then there's money in finance reserve over the next however many months till the money from advertising and what have you starts coming in for the 350th, they can come to finance and say, we got this big thing, we need this much money, we don't have it yet from our sponsorships. I mean, that's sort of how I'm looking at it.
What if we take it right out of stabilization?
What?
Take 25,000 right out of stabilization
Why would we do that?
and then put it back in afterwards.
Rainy day fund.
Well, it fixes it. That way the ambulance is satisfied, you've got your extra money that you can place wherever you wanna place it. And the $25,000 would come from stabilization, then we place it afterwards.
Well, number one, there's not an article on the warrant to take any money out of stabilization.
So, okay.
Let me tell you what I was thinking. So what I was just throwing out to fellow board members here is off the top of my head, a $10,000 amount, which would leave 40-ish for free cash. It would give 350th, 10,000 for now to add to the seed money for the upcoming events.
Yeah.
The 40 would go into finance reserve. And then we don't know what, like Sean said earlier, we know something's gonna come up, but we don't know what it is. But at least we still have half of what we have now, and I know it's not everything that's being asked for, but I think it adds to what I think is about $24,000 that's in.
I
that
do like the idea
sponsorship
of putting
has.
money into reserve.
Yep.
And I do like the idea of trying to make some money available. And your plan has a little flexibility. If they really need more money, they can come back and it'll be there. I mean, that's an option, right?
We just have to look about, accessing the money out of finance. I mean, if there's a debt, you really can only do it if there's a deficit in the
Right.
account.
And it has to be unforeseen deficit. If you intentionally go
Yeah.
out and spend more money than you have to fund a band or fireworks or whatever, that's not really,
Another
I think we would have a problem calling that an unforeseen deficit. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm just trying to think about if you could do that. I mean, maybe you could say if it was a fundraising shortfall, can you say,
How many events are from December 31st, when you guys have the first event, to June 30th? Because the money we're asking about right now, you're discussing anyways, can only be in 2020. Anything after June 30th has to come into 21's fiscal budget anyway, so you can't,
So,
it's like you're gonna return it to take it back again anyway, so truthfully, do we
So-
know
so-
how many events there are?
There's some things you could probably do though, like,
well, so,
I'm just trying to make it easier if there's 4 events that we know of, you know what I mean? I'm just saying.
it's
for a
actually,
number.
it's actually the opposite. So,
less.
because the biggest cost is the parade.
Right.
So the total budget, I know, and this, you know, I went through after I watched the meeting from Tuesday night, and went through and I tried to be as prepared as possible. The total current budget for everything is $136,000. All right, that's broken down for every event and some unforeseen stuff. Of that, approximately 100,000 is gonna be within fiscal year 2020. So the majority of your spend is now. And so, because
That answer wasn't the other, we didn't have
Yeah,
that answer
'cause
the other night.
the
so
parade
I
is
was
more than
wondering how
half
much
your
was
money.
really in fiscal 2020.
you know, the parade is more than half your money. As Brian said the other night, you know, a lot of these are, some of them you have to put deposits down, some of them you have to pay day of or week before or any of that and stuff.
And that's June, so to your
And
point.
that's June. So that's, and so, you know, going back, originally it was a 3-year article, 25,000 a year. The reality is that the third year of the article, of the original concept, the third year is almost a moot point. You know,
cause you're almost done.
you're almost, really your only big outlay at that point is the fireworks in December.
yeah, well, hopefully your fundraising's done by that.
Yeah, at that point, everything is all good and you're all set.
Yeah.
You know, the intent of the committee right from the get-go has been that we're gonna have money left at the end, and that money rolls back into the general fund. You know, that's how the anniversary account is set up. An anniversary account is, you're allowed to raise funds from town appropriations, from donations, from ticket sales, any of that, the year prior, the year of, and the year after. And at the conclusion of the year after, that, anything left in that account rolls into the general fund. That's by state law what an anniversary account is, and that's the account that we set up at town meeting, and that's what's there. So that certainly, by all means, is still the intention of this group.
Do you have any guesstimate of how much money might come back? Just talking to other committees or?
I can tell you under the current estimates, again, and it's tough, because you're estimating how much people are gonna donate. I know it was talked about the other night, there was only $7,000 that's come in. Some of that is also, that's the checks that have cashed, that's what's hit the books. You know, part of what we're doing is, especially with your larger businesses that are making commitments, is you're getting a commitment, say, for 10,000, but it's 5,000 this year, 5,000 next year, so they get a tax write-off in 2 years. Right, so a lot of these commitments are coming in as 2-year commitments. We're only hitting the books right off the bat. Right now, we have commitments, it's $21,000 as of today, that is signed, approved, committed 100%. There's a lot of others that are out there. You know, you've done that first round of going through, but, you know, anyone that's worked at a business, it's tough to walk in the day that you first go talk to someone, tell them what you're looking to do, and they cut you a check that day. It just doesn't happen, especially when the dollar amounts that we're talking. So you're kind of in that 2, 3, 4 time follow-up to get a lot of these where you're actually starting to see the money come in. The other tough thing is to go to a business and say, yep, we're looking for this, we're looking for the donation, but we're still 8 months away from the first event or the first quote-unquote return that you're gonna get on your funding or on your sponsorship. Because at the end of the day, it's a contribution, but it's also a marketing. You know, and that's what they're doing it for. They're doing it, yes, for goodwill and to help out, but they're also getting marketing benefits off of it. So when you're going to them for something that is, here we are in May, and the first sign of anything that we're gonna have their name out there isn't gonna be until December or January, it's tough to get someone to write that check right now. You know, they'll say, yeah, we're gonna do it, we're gonna commit, but you just don't get that money up front. And that's where a lot of it is. So going back to your question, Ed, you know, the projections we have, if we fill the sponsorship slots that we've laid out, we're hoping to be able to, you know, right now, so we've gotten 12,000, I think it's come from the town. Right now, we're hoping to be able to return that whole 12,000. You know, if we fill all the slots,
So,
you know.
I realize it's all moving parts together. So I've been sitting here looking at numbers, and I just say still, you have to consider the ambulance stuff anyway, it's still under consideration, but I looked at revenue, we've talked about a figure of $120,000 is what we wanted in that surplus. And as of today, if I use Stephanie Goslin's figures through February, and then the February, March, and April revenue, it's another 23,000. So there's 128,368 in ambulance surplus today, recorded today. The ambulance makes $6,600 a month revenue on average, and we billed out $120,000 in the last 4 months, which is actually a much larger figure. So I'm comfortable saying that the ambulance surplus could give $13,000 this year to this, with $20,000 from ambulance trust, which would mean it would only $17,000 would have to come if funded from free cash. So I don't know if that helps any of the decisions. I don't know if it helps any of the considerations, the other options. But I'm looking at numbers here. I'm comfortable with these figures and the amount that's been committed, the amount of build out, and the receipts. So 17,000 instead of the what we talked about, 50. Instead of 30, it's 17, which is at least a little bit better. It's 12,000, 13,000 better. I don't know if it helps anywhere else. It's as I look at numbers.
I think we're pretty conservative there anyway, so.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Personally, I'd be comfortable.
I'm comfortable with it. No, I'm definitely comfortable with it.
The number you're using is a pretty conservative number to begin with.
Right.
It's not like we're
Right,
stretching that.
right. So I just wanted to lay that out there. I've been looking at stuff here.
Right,
You can do it.
And even if we didn't use it this year, we could use it next year, so.
Yeah.
You know, so it gives us pause.
Yeah.
So anyway, so.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like we're in a position to take any money out of stabilization to do anything unless it's an absolute emergency. You know, like that's, I mean, we've used stabilization now, how many times? And we put some back, but not much.
No.
Not what we wanted.
So that ambulance, I mean, the year's worth of revenue ambulance is pretty, that's solid if you have that.
Yeah, we have it. There's a year plus a year. There's a year in reserve, essentially.
What did we put? Yeah, what did we put in the 350th, 12,000 last year?
10,000
was
last
10
year, and then
from-
there was 2,000, I think, from a
Left
prior, from like a
Carried over.
15, oh, no, that was a separate. That was a
okay.
carryover donations that couldn't be touched. But there was like a $200 or $2,000 or $2,500 article from like 3 or 4 years ago,
We put in
Oh, you're right. There was something. I do remember
before there
that.
was even an account.
Yep. We knew it was coming.
$12,600.
Yep.
The 600 then.
Yeah. Oh, that's what, actually, it's been 3 appropriations, because the first year to open it, there was $100.
And
Then it was a 10,000 at the special meeting, and then the 2,500 from 3 years ago, or 4 years ago.
So if you start with 83, you took 30 from the ambulance, you get 50. If
17.
17 for the ambulance.
Just backed it out,
Yeah, we only need
17.
17.
Because he's, it's all right.
Steven
Well-
says you can do it.
yeah, but do we have to, is that, I get, the question is that available now, or do we have to wait?
It is
until
available
that-
now. It's
Wait until
recorded.
that is certified by the accountant that we have that money in there.
He's got it. This is what we did at the last town meeting. We went to these, we had these receipts, and and they have it.
No, you're talking free cash certification?
Oh, you talking about free cash? You talking about ambulance surplus?
No, it's
I'm
not
talking about
Ambulance.
The ambulance surplus, yes. This is how we fund every year. And that's how we got in it this year. How we got into that situation. You have to wait till what you had for revenue, and once it's recorded. So, the figure he gave us in February was 104,763. And that's before we added another 23,605 over the time since then, 3 months since then.
So the only risk is that if somehow the ambulance loses revenue in the last couple months.
But the budget's only 67,000, right?
The bottom line is if you appropriate 25,000 for that article, you'll have 41,000 left over in free cash.
Well, I was kind of thinking 12, but
Well, just remember, like I said the other night, if bills come in or if something comes in and we can't pay because we don't have the money, it's not gonna get done. And the parade will be whatever it is.
But it doesn't even get to that point because we can't make the commitment without having the funds in the account. Until you actually have the funds in the account, you can't make a commitment. You know, I mean, personally, and you're the chair, but my personal opinion is we don't sign a commitment for something without
have the money.
having the funds in the account that covers the commitment that's made. Because you never can say for sure what's gonna come in. So that, you know, from a fiscal perspective, you just can't physically do that.
That's why we asked for what we did, 25,000 each year, when we planned it.
So, okay. So if we start with 83, take 17 for the ambulance, we're left with 66. Take 25 for the 350th, we're left with 41. Take 20 of that and put that in. At that point, I'm not, do we put any in finance reserve? Any extra in finance reserve at that point?
What else will we do with it?
We have 30 in there.
Leave it.
So.
So,
Yeah, but.
So the question is-
We need it, we gotta go to town meeting.
No.
but once the money is certified, we can spend it all.
For free cash?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, before June 30th, it has to be spent.
Yeah, so we assume we're gonna get that certification Monday.
Mhm.
So we'll know, so if it is in fact 404, we can take the 41 that's left over and we can put all that in finance reserve. We don't have to make that
It's
decision,
appropriated.
because it's appropriated.
Right.
Right, we'd plug that in as a
No,
funding
that's
source from free cash for that, for the reserve line.
Right. If they come back and say, that's the only danger in all this, is if they come back and say, no, the number's not 404, it's 380 or 350,
If it, yeah, well, yeah,
right?
we'll have to have
Then,
a talk, we'll have to have a talk.
then
So-
we'll have, right?
Well, it can't be, so if all this plays out tonight and we're down to 40, so if anything comes in if they come back and say it's less than 374, I mean, I know we want to have something, but if it's less than 374, we've got to go back to the drawing board and make changes. That's the amount, that's the magic number,
That's right.
374, that's the
Then all of a sudden, we may
40,000
not have an
threshold.
ambulance, we may, yeah, whatever.
Or whatever else we were going to pay
So long
for.
as everybody understands all
Yeah,
that.
it's always.
I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, it's.
The other shoe drops and
it's-
that happens.
Okay.
It's over.
Well, I'm okay with that. Diane?
I'm okay with that too.
Sean?
Yeah, Steven's comfortable with that.
So we're okay with the 17 for the ambulance and,
You guys?
I just
And
want you to go through
25.
it one more time.
Yeah,
See what you
okay,
said.
so
It's all
So I
whatever.
So 17,000 from ambulance surplus?
17 from ambulance, no.
No,
Oh, from free cash, okay.
17 from free cash,
13 from ambulance surplus,
13 from ambulance surplus,
20 from ambulance trust.
20 from trust.
Mhm.
So that leaves us with 66 in free cash, 25 to 350. Right?
yep,
My What?
it was here some,
No.
yeah,
So, all right,
yes,
And then,
thank you.
yeah, go ahead, Marlene.
okay, so,
And then we're
But the
left with 41 that we will, if we get the whole 404, the 41 will be added to finance reserve.
so I'm going to plug in 33,000 in the other funds, so that's the 20 from ambulance trust and 13 from ambulance surplus, correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
Okay,
for that article, right.
right,
Well,
and
you have
then we're,
30 plugged in there for finance reserve original?
Yeah.
what's
I think
that?
so. You know what? I don't even pay attention to that.
Okay,
You just looked at it, okay. Yeah, 30. Yeah, no, it's 30. Yeah, no.
oops,
Good question. Yeah, no. So that 30 would be 71 or whatever.
So it all still starts with if.
Huh?
It all still starts with if.
Oh, yeah,
know,
no,
so-
it all starts with if.
With a capital I.
Yeah. Right, and we'll know, and so,
Okay.
I guess since we don't actually know, I guess we can vote. Can we vote on the budget
With the information we
Tuesday
have.
night at
Oh,
6 o'clock? Right before town meeting? Because then everything's
Signed, sealed,
certified.
delivered.
I mean, because any motion we make tonight is gonna be
subject to.
subject to
Contingent,
that, so, but there's no rule saying that we can't, because we're gonna meet
Doesn't
at.
matter, we can vote it now and re-vote it then, and not vote it now and vote it then.
Right.
We could do it any time.
Right, so if we all
could put a
agree
new
that,
budget on the floor at
Yeah.
6:30 if we wanted to.
that's right. If we all agree that this is our intention, we'll vote on it, because we meet Tuesday night at 6 o'clock before town meeting.
Yeah.
We'll vote on it then.
Yeah.
Is that okay, Marlene?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
I
I'm
know
just
it
thinking
makes you
usually,
nervous.
I know, it does. I just, because, generally it's voted before town meeting and it has to be on file with the town clerk's office. So,
But tonight, and then if it
Let's-
changes,
We'll
we'll.
vote it, we'll make a motion, we'll vote it tonight, and if something changes,
but you're
we'll
right,
vote
though,
it change.
there
We'll
have
redo
been
it on Tuesday.
changes
Yeah, we
an
could-
hour
we could-
before town
yeah, we
meeting.
could submit a new
There
vote
have,
right then and there, yeah.
absolutely.
All right.
Mhm, That's
So-
right.
So I would entertain a motion to accept, to propose the budget for fiscal year 2020 as we have discussed. Is there any further discussion on that? Any other thing that we need to talk about?
Marlene, did you?
I just have a question. So, did you decide to add money to the reserve fund?
Yes.
You
Yes.
did, okay.
41,000.
41,000. All right.
Okay. Hearing no other discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
I just want to clarify that that includes the changes between elections and the clerk's expense.
Right.
I thought we weren't doing that.
Yeah, I thought we decided not to.
Okay, I thought we decided to
do it,
we'll look
yeah.
at it, and then if it didn't work out, we'll go
Right,
back.
we're gonna
Okay.
try it this year.
Right.
If it
so
doesn't
we made
work,
those
if we-
adjustments
Okay.
I mean,
earlier.
this is not
Okay.
gonna be a major problem, you know
No,
what I mean,
it's
one way or
not gonna
another,
be
yeah.
an issue. We'll make this
Yeah.
work. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, I'll make a motion on behalf of the Board of Selectmen to approve the fiscal year 2020 budget as discussed this evening.
Motion made, motion seconded. Any discussion?
We've
All
had
in
plenty.
favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Great. Awesome. I believe so. We are scheduled,
That was more than 10 minutes.
I know, it was more than 10 minutes.
You promised 10 minutes?
I did. It's before 8 o'clock.
I was surprised.
Tuesday at 6,
I just
right?
have a couple of,
Yep.
or actually one item
Tuesday
to
at
take
6
up.
o'clock, we meet at Smith Cabin.
Yeah, I believe you are
In
posted.
the library. We always meet
Right.
an hour before.
Academy. I had a conversation with Justin earlier today, and he had wanted to let me know that as the accountant, he's receiving a couple of department warnings regarding fiscal year 19 budgets, and asked if the Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen could start the end of the year transfers a little early, so maybe in the next 2 weeks, and start taking some of them up. So I just wanted to put that out there, and
Through Tuesday.
Do we know what budgets we're talking about?
the town accountant's line and facilities budget. But I told him that, Phil, you and I had talked with Diane and Stephanie, was that last week or the week before? And I think maybe there was still some adjustments that need to be looked
Yeah.
at.
Some adjustments, and don't forget, we had the power surge.
Correct.
That was $17,000. That came out of
Mhm.
the facilities budget. That was reimbursed through the insurance. but
Right.
That does not.
That
fall
goes
back
to the
into
general fund, that reimbursement.
So, but Justin is fairly comfortable with what we have left in finance reserve and what generally we can move around within budgets, we can cover all these things.
Right, we,
Want to make
well-
sure, we just,
Yeah,
We do
Right?
know there are some departments that will be turning back money. We know there's going to be a surplus in the insurance line item,
Okay,
health insurance, I should say.
Yep.
Not general
yeah, I know.
liability,
General,
property, health
we've already
insurance line.
paid more than
Yeah.
that, right. Okay,
But
now,
just-
I just asked the question, because,
Mhm.
So in the next couple of weeks, if we get together, we're not, is it just to give us a heads up as to what's coming? I mean,
Well,
we
we
can't.
No, to
are we-
actually-
It's not too early?
to-
I mean,
Oh, no, you can do it
I
in,
mean, will we have accurate,
Well,
Im-
that's the,
will we have accurate information is my
legally
concern.
you can do it.
Yes,
Right,
yes.
legally you
Legally, we
can.
can do it.
Is because
right.
You wait
try to
till,
do it all at once, when it's
Right.
all said and done,
yeah,
you know,
that's
all
kind of
done.
my, okay.
But like if, like things like health insurance, you know now.
Yes,
So
right,
If you needed to use that, so you could kind of do it ongoing
Bigger ticket
as you
items,
know.
yeah.
and-
right,
okay.
The accountant's budget, we're certain of that. Facilities,
yep.
I just think we need to
All
still
right,
take
I
a
just
look at
didn't-
have
that.
to wait for facilities, because you don't know what the electric bills and everything else coming in.
Well,
at the
that's
end of
true.
the
right,
fiscal year.
right.
Yeah, that's why we've usually done it in that gap period between the end of the fiscal year and
Plus
August.
with all the adjustments.
In the
that
middle
were
of
made
July
in
or
the
so.
supply, you don't know if there's another budget. You know, maybe the vehicle maintenance budget, because a lot of stuff was charged wrong against other accounts and not the vehicle maintenance budget. So that might offset something there. We don't know until all the adjustments are made.
Well, and the other thing could be that some of those things might be discovered as we go through this process, and
Right.
that can
Right.
assist in figuring out, when, you know, if the department head of whatever group is,
You might not need
that
a
Justin wants
transfer.
us, correct,
Because it might be rebooked in the right way.
Correct,
Right.
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
so, all right, yeah, I mean, actually, that might work out well.
All right.
So, yeah, after town meeting, couple
Yeah.
weeks, but I will follow up though, and
Yeah, and
to
I
know
think
for
it would
sure
be
what we're
helpful
looking at.
that if Stephanie or Justin were actually
We can't,
there.
I would also say we can't use this spreadsheet again unless it has a difference column in it.
Yeah.
if you look at the budget,
The new one has one.
I added all of those.
Okay.
The ones that did not have it, I
Oh,
added the
okay.
difference
Yeah.
column to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's,
So every budget
Now
has a
has
difference
one.
column,
Okay.
every one of them.
Right, just
Nice-
makes it easy.
Nice
Yeah,
job on
I
this.
also added on, I think it was the other financing sources, I added the free cash at the bottom and
Okay.
just added the,
the only other
items
thing
we're
that would be
funding.
helpful is, it looks like FY nineteen on the schedules, that
Mhm.
FY nineteen is combined. 18 and 19 are not broken out between expense and salary.
oh, in the budgets?
Yeah,
It-
so-
Yeah, that was.
It would be, 18, not so much, but if the prior year, you know what I mean, it just,
19 just has the total
One
budget,
number, right,
It
yeah.
doesn't break out salary and expense.
I don't know. Six,
And it's
I guess
always good, yeah. 'cause
it's
we
a little
always-
easier if you can look at them
Mhm.
separately, but, you know, I mean, we
Right,
can also, just because you can theoretically do it, but you don't
Well, it's
really
easier to
know.
look at what the
Right.
difference is when you're
Right.
comparing fiscal
Right.
years.
Yep.
Yeah. Mhm.
And since we don't do like zero-based budgeting, we actually do the exact opposite of that. Like, it makes sense to work off the previous fiscal year in a
Yeah.
lot of ways.
Mhm.
right.
Just,
I thought it worked really well this year,
Yeah.
doing it that way.
yeah, it does work well. That's always kind of how we've done it. So.
Yeah.
Still this funny figure on the levy capacity from last year, however, I don't know,
For 18 and
for
19.
19, 200,
Yeah,
I'm not sure how that plays into the schedule.
That's also weird on the front page.
Yeah.
We gotta figure out that front page and what's going on with that.
Mhm.
Because
And I
it's showing
assume-
$150,000 available for appropriation, which we know is not accurate. So.
Right.
Mhm.
And
I'm
I-
sure that's just tracing the formulas.
And I assume next year, using the same spreadsheet, that the numbers will get better every year. You know,
And we'll get
'cause
more comfortable with it.
Right.
I just
Okay.
wanted to, if I could, just thank Marlene for all the time and
Yeah.
effort she's put into this and working with Justin.
Thanks.
An unsung hero, so all the hours and the time you put in, really, you know, we don't often get to say that, but you've really been kicking it, so.
well,
Thank
thank
you
you.
very much.
I always enjoy working on it, but it is time consuming and
It
just
sure is,
part of the process.
plus with
We
all the other
work on
duties,
it.
but thank you.
We all
I
work
just
on
wanted
it.
to thank you, Marlene,
Welcome. Thank
and everybody
you.
else who's had input, the ladies on the other end of the table as well.
Yes.
Okay,
Sharon.
before we leave, I do have one item under
Guess I'm done, thank you.
business, and that's to let everybody know that general bids for the town hall will be due on June 19th, so we're moving along on town hall renovations, that's all. So, and that's continued old business, and that's the only item I have. Do you guys have any more discussion on the finances?
We're good. We'll see you
Guys
guys
have
on,
anything?
Nope.
We'll
yeah.
see you Tuesday then, right?
Motion.
All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn, and seconded, all in favor?
Aye, thanks, John.
Okay, motion carries.
Aye.